What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another Friday night live interactive sports talk. I'm, of course, one half of the dynamic duo, the tag team champions of sports talk. It's your boy, Stephen Box, joined as always by my co host.
And that will be your boy, Cool McCain. Another Friday. We're going to get into it. But before we do, you got to remember who we are.
The play call. So cool, man. Big week in sports, man. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff tonight. Got a little NBA stuff we're going to start talking about. It's almost that time to move into basketball season, pretty much full time, at least for a little bit. And then obviously we got to talk about this Brian Flores situation because
Yes, sir.
that's craziness. Couple of NFL coaching things to talk about as well, and we're gonna do our recap of the championship game, which I'm sure there's some people who watch this show on a regular basis who are very interested to hear what I have to say about what happened with my 49ers last weekend. So we'll get to that. You guys stick around for that. We're gonna make you wait for that one. So let's kick it off with this all-star game, man. We now had the full rosters because we had the reserves and the starters available. So
hmm
what are your thoughts, man? Do you have anybody that you're loving, anybody you're hating, some snubs? What you got?
Well, man, let me preface it by saying this. There's always going to be some people that you feel like shouldn't be on that are going to be on. There's always going to be some people that get snubbed in a sense, right? Because there's only so many spots. But I got to be honest. When I'm looking at the rosters, there's one name that sticks out to me above the rest. There are other names, but there's one name that sticks out,
Okay.
and that would be as a reserve in the East. I see Fred Van Vliet, who has had a decent season, but in over LaMelo Ball. It's a little shocking for me. I live in Charlotte, but outside of that, just seeing what he's brought to that team, what he's been able to do, he's actually obviously in the rising star situation. But I think he's a guy that does deserve a spot on this team.
Okay.
There can be an argument made that his teammate deserves a spot as well. I don't believe Charlotte's going to be able to get two people in. I think that's a big ask,
Yeah.
right? Um, on the West, it's kind of one of those things. So I look at the West. I see, a guy like Draymond Green, good player. Um, Not attempting to take anything away from Draymond Green, but at this point in his career, him really being on the All Star team, hmm, you got to kind of ask yourself, is that really what's really good? There's not a lot of guys that maybe could take his place just based off performances, but there is one guy that does stick out to me. He plays for the New Orleans Pelicans, right? And he's had a good season. Actually had his stats up earlier, but not really too much of a stat guy. But I will say that stats do matter at some points. Like there's never a point where you're like stats don't matter at all.
Right.
But Brandon Ingram should be on the All Star team, in my opinion, above um, Draymond Green. My thought process was let me pick one from the East, one from the West.
Right.
There was the thought about you know Chris Paul. He's the point guard on the best team, but is he really All Star worthy? Is this more a name award for him? I think the
Right.
same for Draymond Green, but I think Brandon Ingram's had a good season. He's been the guy because you haven't had, you know, uh, obviously Zion Williamson playing at all, so you've had to have him kind of be the guy. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my thing with that. And what up, Witty? We ain't forget about you.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think you make some interesting points. Obviously, the question I think always comes down to whose place do they take, right? Like a lot of people Like you'll see they'll throw all these names out there of guys who, oh, I can't believe they're not, that this person isn't on. But then they don't want to take nobody off the team.
Right.
You've only got so many roster spots. You got to take somebody off in order to put somebody on. And a couple of these guys are kind of borderline, in terms of if they really should or shouldn't be on, which is why they may have got snubbed in the first place, because it's a little bit borderline, somewhat subjective. DeJounte Murray is a guy that I know I'm seeing a lot out there, and I agree with. He's somebody who has actually played really well this season. And I think that kind of comes down to sometimes you look at the team as a whole, and a guy maybe doesn't get an opportunity because of that. One guy that did not actually make the roster, and that I have absolutely no problem with not making the roster for the first time since his rookie season, is Anthony Davis. I'm a Lakers fan, but Anthony Davis has been hurt most of this year. And one of our big complaints a lot of times with these, Chris Paul, is that guys get in off a reputation. They haven't necessarily earned it this year, but they have a reputation, and so they get in based on that reputation. So I was actually glad to see that Anthony Davis did not take a slot from somebody else.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Definitely makes sense. The whole Chris Paul thing, we can swap Chris Paul to DeJounte Murray real quick out, and it's
Just
seamless for me.
just go switch it up.
Yeah, and I don't mind saying, hey, like you said, if you're going to sit here and say we need to take this person off, then who's taking the place? I wanted to give a quick shout out. I know we're not going to spend a lot of time on this topic, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the new format for the Rising Stars game. So they're going to have a roster of rookies, sophomores, and then for the first time, there's going to be 4 G League players. And it's going to be like a 4-team deal where where the 2 teams play each other, and those 2 that win play each other. Each one of the teams will have a G League player, and then they'll be able to draft the other guys. So I think that that's a good format for that game. We're still going to have the same format for the NBA, where we're going to have Team LeBron, Team Durant. And I will simply say, I think this format is trash for the All-Star game. Let's let the East play the West. Let's put up home court in the playoffs for it, and let the game mean a little something at least, right? Witty Flow says CP3 forever. My personal answer to that is no. But if you feel that way, you're not wrong. I just feel very different.
So I don't really personally have an issue with the whole draft thing. I know it brings a little extra excitement for some people. It doesn't do anything for me personally, but I don't have a problem with it.
I have a problem.
Yeah, we've kind of gathered, one thing that I will say about this, with the game being in Cleveland, I know it's kind of that feel good to have LeBron be, one of the captains and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not crazy about the way they go about picking the captains, because we've now last year had Durant, who was a captain who didn't even play in the game.
And won't play this year, by the way.
Yeah. And now this year, both him and LeBron could potentially miss the game. Mm-hmm. So we're now going to have 2 captains who aren't even going to be on the court. So I'm not crazy about that aspect of it. So from that standpoint, I kind of agree with you that we avoid that nonsense altogether if we just go back to East versus West. So from that standpoint, I would agree with your argument, but I don't really have a problem with the idea of it in general.
Yeah, and then you can get the same excitement from the East versus the same excitement of the draft and all that from the Rising Stars game. So we don't even have to do all that with the real game.
But, Witty, to respond to your comment, shouldn't we save comments like that for after CP3 gets a ring for anybody?
Yeah. Here's the thing, Witty. CP3 has how many rings? As many as me and you and my co-host. So what is it that you think he's going to be able to do to get a team over the hump when he's never done it in his career?
Right.
That's all I'm saying about CP3. He's not
Hey,
coming to Denver to get us nothing because he can't do that anywhere.
I'm not sure which is the goat of, but it's
Oh, I
not.
wanted to let you know you picked the wrong emoji. It's supposed to be the trash can beside it that you're supposed to pick, bro.
I'm not gonna say the dude's trash, but I'm certainly not gonna call him the goat either. So
If you're calling him the goat, I'm calling him trash.
I'll be somewhere in between the two of y'all. So
I'll say he's closer to trash than the goat. So that's my opinion. If
yeah,
you're going
I'll
that
just
extreme, I'm gonna roll the other way.
yeah, I'll just stay over here between the two of y'all, man. Quick shout out to man. We did not get a chance to discuss this before the show to bring this up, but I did just want to acknowledge that they did actually create a new MVP trophy, the Kobe Bryant MVP
Yeah.
trophy. So actually pretty nice looking little trophy, man. So just want to give a shout out to that real quick.
Yep. It wasn't bad looking. I saw it earlier. Definitely nice, sleek design. I think honoring Kobe is definitely the right move to make. He meant a lot to the game, and the fact that he's no longer here with us, at least having these small things that we do to kind of acknowledge him and his history in the sport, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody did say, like, look, man, I know the Kia sponsors MVP. Did we really need to have that Kia logo so big though?
Hey man, Kia is putting up their bread. Respect our logo.
But hey, they're not paying us, so we're not gonna talk no more about them.
That's true. Kia
Yeah,
twice is enough.
yeah. So, kind of switching gears from the All Star game. I know there was a trade that happened today. Did you want to discuss that real quick?
Yeah, man. So Portland traded Robert Covington and Norman Powell to the Los Angeles Clippers for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a future second round pick. So a lot of the early prognosticators are all like, Portland got ripped. They got ribbed. They lost Robert Covington and Norman Powell. Let me say this, man. Robert Covington's averaging like 8 points a game. Great on defense. He's going to bring that aspect to a Clippers team that definitely needs that. Norman Powell, he's a scorer. He's a guy that can be like a secondary scorer or can really run your second unit. That'll be good, especially when you get Chris Paul back if he's able to come back this year. So there'll be good pieces for them. But, what the Clippers did was they traded for Eric Bledsoe,
Hmm.
who after this season, they can get rid of his contract for like almost $4 million.
Yeah,
Is all that would be owed to him if they were to release him. You
right.
know, Keon Johnson, he's a small contract guy after the 2022-23 season. Team option, get rid of him. So what you did was you opened yourself up probably about 15 million this coming year, just off the trade, as well as whatever don't have long-term obligations to Covington and Powell, who I'm not going to disrespect them as players, but I'm going to say in that situation, they weren't going to help that team win a ring. So you're getting rid of pieces that you probably paid more than you should have for,
Yeah,
and bringing in pieces that you can now move on from, either by you might just do buyouts or via the trade. So I think it's a good move for Portland in that sense. As far as the talent, obviously I'd agree that Powell and Covington are a better grab, but when you're looking long term, you got to open up cap space.
yeah,
You need somebody that you could bring in to play alongside Damian Lillard before he decides to go somewhere else. So this
yeah.
is a way to do that, without having to get rid of other pieces that were more of your long term plans. So I think it works out for both teams, and that's what it is.
So Woody, I'm pretty sure that Jesus is not available as a free agent for the NBA. I don't think you can sign him. So putting that out there. Yeah, man, it's funny because we talk about this all the time. We actually joke about this with our fantasy football league, right? Where you have to offer people something of value in order to get something yourself. So, in order for Portland to free up this cap space so that they can now have an opportunity to go out and get somebody to pair with Lillard, they had to find a way to free up that cap space. And the only way to do that was to give up something of some actual value to someone else. So, people
Very
can walk
true.
around talking about how Portland got fleeced, but the reality is they made a move that was mutually beneficial.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why that concept is hard for people to understand, but hey, it appears to be so.
There's nothing you can really do about that, right?
Now, speaking of things that are not hard to understand, last Friday, we sat here on this show and we told you that Tom Brady was going to retire. We told you that his wife had already basically put it out there that he's done. We also told you that Tom Brady was not going to do it during championship weekend, that he was going to wait until after the championship games were over, because Tom Brady, having played in those games, understands what it takes to actually get there. And you heard person after person the whole week was talking about this. They were talking about how Brady's not going to want to upstage those guys, how he's not going to announce anything, how he's going to wait. So if you were paying attention, Adam Scheffler, you would have easily been able to figure this out. Now, here's the thing. Adam Scheffler basically did what we did, right? He knew that Tom Brady was going to retire, and he kind of put it out there. The difference is when we put it out there, we were like just saying like, hey, this is what we think is going to happen, right? Adam Scheffler actually reported it as like, hey, this is going down. And I'm going to just say that whatever feelings I have about Brady personally, dude, that man earned a right to make his own announcement. You had no right to go out there and tell everyone that this dude was retiring and try to look bad. And then you're going to have the nerve after Brady actually officially retires to come back out to us. See, I told you guys I was right. It's like, it's not about you, bro. It's about Brady. I mean, the man played, 22 seasons? You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's earned the respect to be able to come out and do this in his own way. But we did tell you it was going to happen, and we told you it was not going to happen until after the championship weekend.
So very, very true. I mean, the biggest thing for me about the whole situation is it was clear that Brady was going to, move on from playing. People didn't want to acknowledge it. People didn't want to believe it, right? And they still don't to an extent. But the fact of the matter is, the man's 44 years old. I mean, at some point, your body can't handle what it takes in off season and all that to continue to play. And your wife is already like, look, you need to retire. And we've been seeing some different things from her for a few years. So we know at some point, this day was coming. As my co-host so eloquently stated a few moments ago, we did say last week that he was going to retire. We laid it out for you why. If you want to check the receipts, the episode's right there. Go look at it.
Go find it. Not hiding from you.
We're not hiding what we said.
Yeah.
It was clear. But like you said, the difference between what we did and some other people, including Adam Schefter, was we allowed Tom Brady to come out and say, then we come on this week after he's done it and talk about it. He has earned that much. I say he's a cheater, and I believe he's a cheater. He'll always be a cheater to me. Right. But even so, he had enough stats that he earned the respect that he should be able to say, hey, I'm done, and not have other people put it out there. And then his agent has to come out and say, hey, he's still thinking about it. So we can kind of push it to the side for the weekend and then kind of do it in this break where you have a 2-week window before the Super Bowl. So I appreciate the fact that that was probably his intention. Shame on the reporters who try to break that early to be the first one to say, yeah, I said it, yeah. But, that's what happened. But it's official now. Nothing else to talk about.
So Woody does not agree with us. He says that's what Tom gets for cheating.
Woody, I'll be honest with you, man. There's a portion of me that completely agrees with you. There is. I'm not going to front. But I think even so, you still should get that respect to be able to announce your own retirement, no matter who you are, even if you're a dirty cheater.
Yeah. I can respect that, man.
Yeah.
So speaking of dirty cheaters, or at least people who have, or at least people who have a lot of scandals around them. Let's talk about the Commanders.
Listen, I'm gonna let you start out with that. I gotta set my camera off for a moment because I just got you. Go ahead.
Okay, so first and foremost, bro, like seriously, how old are you in that picture? The picture looked like at least 10 years old, bro. So, anyways, man, the problem that I see with this name is twofold. Number one, this is literally the best thing you can come up with after 2 years. You actually had pretty much all of your fan base, even star players on your team, who actually came out before you even made the announcement, when this was one of the potential names that got leaked, and we're like, I really hope it's not the Commanders. Right? I mean, people told you they didn't like the name before you even put it out, just as it be one of the finalists. You had an opportunity at that point to change your mind and go a different direction. Now, I personally think the fact that your coach has a bit of a military fetish played into this. But that's not my only problem with this. First of all, the uniforms are not nice looking. Okay. I'm sorry, but they're not. This little shield that you came up with, yeah, look, would he put these are some of the different names? I mean, honestly, Red Wolves, I actually would have liked a little bit better. Warhogs, something they could have did just as, an ode to the hogs.
You could have went with
yeah,
the Buffaloes,
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could have did. But here's the thing. You did this little shield logo thing, right? So first of all, they did like the little 3 stars, and it's supposed to represent Washington, D.C. and all this different stuff. Bro, your 3 stars look exactly like the Tennessee Titans logo. Like you just look like you just basically jacked part of their logo.
Could you just show the people that logo if you have it where you can show them?
I will pull it up while you're talking and giving your yes, take command is that's just horrible. That's actually now taking the place of my other favorite NFL team quote, which was bear down.
Oh, oh man. Okay.
Yeah, so here's the thing. You come out with this little shield, right? And what he says that the Washington football team was a better name. The problem with Washington football team is it sounds like a soccer club. And your little shield logo looks like it belongs on a soccer jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't really get away from the whole soccer vibe. But on top of that, you decided to put championship years on your little badge, whatever you want to call this thing, right? Bro.
Your secondary logo.
Yeah, bro. They actually went and put the years that the Super Bowl took place. Not the actual year not the season they won a championship in, but the year that the Super Bowl took place. Nobody does that. Like my team, I've got a banner right behind me that says the 49ers won the Super Bowl in 1988 and 1989. Those Super Bowls were actually played in 89 and 90, but they were for the 88 and 89 seasons. That's how it's always been. That's how it should be. And for you as an organization to come out and do that is just beyond ridiculous. So, yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I think Woody might have I'm not even gonna put his comment up since it has some unsavory language in it. But yeah, he just said the years are wrong.
Yeah,
too,
he definitely agrees with that.
Yeah.
So I guess the Commanders.
I'll look for that. I'll look for that logo while you do this.
No problem. I guess the Commanders are commanding that you not point that out. So I want to start off with a list of names I think are worse than the Commanders, right? So everybody talks about the names that are better. So I just want to give you, in my opinion, a list of 10 names that I think are worse than the Commanders. And these are probably the only 10 that are worse than the Commanders that don't have profane language in them. So the Washington Masters would be worse. Mm-hmm. The Washington Owners would be worse. The Washington Blackfaces would be worse. The Washington Rednecks would be worse. The Runaways would be worse. The Presidents would be worse. The Lawyers would be worse. The Founders would be worse. the Warlocks would be worse, and the Woodpeckers would be worse. That's the list of 10 names that I can think of that would be worse than this. So what I'm saying to you is anything besides those 10 and the name you picked would have been better. Why on God's green earth did you make the decision to name yourself the Commanders? So I have a 15-year-old daughter. So my daughter comes in from school. I'm like, hey, did you hear what happened with the football team's name? She says, no. What? I said, they changed it. She's like, yeah. I was like, what did they change it to? So I told her, the Commanders. She looked me in my eyes and said, it's horrible. This is a terrible name. Dan Snyder should not have been allowed to make this decision. Dan Snyder needs to go. By the way, I still want to see the emails because once we see the emails, then it's time to push it on. He needs to go. Whoever's the new owner of the team, they should have been the one making these decisions. Now you've pigeonholed yourself into being the Commanders. And I can't speak for anyone else, but your uniforms look like AFL Arena League football uniforms. They are not good uniforms. And obviously this is a knock to the people that designed them. I understand as fans, you're going to have to go and support what you have. But guys, the Commanders, of all the names you could have, you pick the Commanders. And to Whitty's point, Warlocks may not be worse than Commanders. But I can tell you this. There's not a lot of names worse than the Commanders. And the logo that we're talking about is coming up here in a minute. This right here, that's close to the soccer club logos.
Yes, it is.
This is not good. This is horrible. This should have you guys pissed off. And critical Broncos fans, Dan Snyder may be Cobra Commander. Or at least some of those emails might be implicating a lot of other owners as well as the commissioner. Number one, for them to allow this team to be this. And number two, for those emails not to come out. And that's all I could really say. There's so much more you could say about this logo, but I have to say it's bad. The team name is bad. I understand as a fan, if you want to get behind it because it is your team, but I know deep down inside, you're not happy. And I want to let you know that for years to come, I will be making fun of the Commanders.
Yes, indeed.
And you can't command me not to.
So we do need to pause for a quick station break. But when we come back, we're going to dive into this Brian Flores lawsuit and all the stuff around that. So we'll be right back in 30
And we command you to stay tuned.
Command you to stay tuned. All right, we are back, and one final note: Woody did say that they better change the name again, as Commanders is offensive to his religion. So let's dive into this Brian Flores story. So for those of you who might be living under a rock somewhere and haven't heard about this, here's the quick recap. The New York Giants were supposed to be interviewing Brian Flores. A couple days before his interview, he gets a text message from Bill Belichick saying like, hey, congratulations, heard that you are pretty much just shooing for the Giants job. To which he responds, okay, I haven't interviewed with him yet. I'm not interviewing until Thursday. Which Bill Belichick responds, oh crap, I meant to send this to Brian Dabble. My bad. And we are now we have a lawsuit that has been filed against the league and the Giants in regards to discriminatory practices because it appears that they may have violated the rule. I say may because we'll kind of dive into that here in a few minutes. Also, allegations that were given against the Dolphins owner, Ross, that he paid or at least offered to pay for losses to get the team to tank for a better draft pick, and that he attempted to get Brian Flores to what's the word I'm looking for? Interfere, tamper with another player who was under contract to somebody, and tried several times to arrange meetings between Flores and this particular player. So that is the short version of what we've got. So let's dive into this.
A couple more things. We also have the Broncos mentioned for being over an hour late to their meeting, looking disheveled and hungover from the night before. So I want to make sure that part is also, included. Also, as the critical Broncos fan said, Ross giving Flores $100K a game to lose games is a little bit, a nefarious practice to say the least.
Yeah. Now, in the interest of fair and balanced reporting here, we will acknowledge that both Ross as well as John Elway have come out and denied any wrongdoing, and of course the Giants also have come out and said that they did nothing wrong as well. None of that is surprising.
Smallest statement ever, but just one.
Yeah. None of that is surprising. But at least wanted to acknowledge that they have come out and actually denied it, just so in case anybody's wondering if they've actually come out and made statements or not. So I want to start with your thoughts here, man. Let's start with the Giants. I guess the first question to ask is, do you believe that at any point in time that they ever considered Brian Flores as a serious candidate?
No.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you why. Real quick. They had already made a decision by doing multiple interviews with Dabo before you interviewed Flores. So at that point, what you're doing is you're just throwing a filler out there. I don't know if it was just for, public purposes, or, if they needed to fill the Rooney Rule if they hadn't done another coach of color before then. But I will simply say this: either way, if you're interviewing people twice before you interview someone, they're not really a candidate. And what's the point in wasting their time?
Yeah. So I differ slightly. I'm going to say that at some point I believe that he may have actually been a viable candidate, because in his lawsuit, he talks about the fact that he actually went, and Eric, I'm glad to see that you're here because
what's up, Big E?
Because we're not so much a team, Big E. So I'm glad to see you're here. He in his own lawsuit actually said that at some point he did actually talk with the Giants shortly after being fired in Miami, and that he was basically told that there was a chance that Dabo would actually be his offensive coordinator because apparently he was very unhappy with his situation in Buffalo. To me, that's not the kind of information you share with someone if you don't view them as a serious candidate for the job. But the thing is, there were several weeks that passed between that time where he was fired in Miami and the end of the season. So there are obviously things that could change, things that might happen, things that might change your opinion of someone between then and later on. So was he still a serious candidate by the time they actually scheduled the interview? That I don't know. I do believe at one point he was. I cannot say with certainty that he still was a serious candidate when they actually scheduled the interview, though.
Well, I'll simply say this. There's smoke and there's blowing it. And we know where the smoke gets blowed. That's what this feels like to me. Just a little smoke being blown, to this guy. so that they could reel him in for an interview because they need to interview somebody to fill a certain rule that's pretty much circumvented all the time now. But that's a different conversation for a different time. It's only an hour show. But again, I don't believe there was truly ever any interest because here's the thing. I can call you and say, hey, man, I got this great opportunity that I think would be great for you, man. And this dude's going to work with you and this dude's going to work under you and whatever, whatever. But until I put something on paper, it's just words. I don't have to mean what I say. And I don't believe they meant what they said. Especially the Giants, as dysfunctional. They put the funk in dysfunctional as they've been the last few years. I don't believe them. They were going to get somebody in there to develop Daniel Jones. That wasn't going to be him. They never had any interest.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say is the what really is interesting is this idea of if they were interviewing him specifically to take care of the role, because they also were interviewing Leslie Frazier, which also would have qualified for meeting the Rooney Rule. The bigger problem in my mind is this. I don't know if we're going to be able to prove that the Giants did or didn't, because this text message by itself doesn't necessarily prove anything, right? Because unless they can prove that Bill Belichick actually had solid sources that 100% said this is what's going to happen, they can easily spin it as, that was Bill drawing his own assumptions. That was never officially what we were doing, right? They can always play that card. So I don't know if we're going to be able to prove that they officially made this decision before actually meeting the minimum qualifications for the Rooney Rule. But I think this at least is getting people talking about the real problem here, which is the Rooney Rule and the fact that the Rooney Rule even needs to exist in the first place.
Well, I'll say this. I feel that Brian Flores did a good job of saying, hey, because when he first got let go in Miami, they drug him through the mud. They made it seem like the players didn't want him there, that he was disciplining people on some crazy stuff and all these things they were saying. But at the end of the day, we found out because the players came out from the team saying how shocked they were. Players from other teams were coming out saying how shocked they were that this guy got fired, how he was a great coach. Obviously the record speaks for itself. They try to bring up the fact that he had different coordinators, but every time they were winning a lot of games. That hasn't happened in Miami in a long time. So to me, him taking his time means he was saying, okay, let me get my information together. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch what he was saying on when he was on Get Up and some other shows that he went on. I haven't seen everything, but I've seen some of the information. Yep. But I like the fact that they're talking about what happened, but they're doing one very intelligent thing. They are not releasing other information. They let the text message get out, but they're not putting out other information. So if you don't know what the other person has, you can't blow that smoke we were talking about earlier and spin things because you don't have advance notice. The fact of the matter is, these people themselves, they're not able to come up with that. They have a whole PR team that comes up with this stuff. Yeah. So the fact that you're waiting and saying, no, we're not going to let your PR team get a hold to it. We're going to wait. We're going to drop the proof when we want to. This is going to be interesting to see what he can and can't prove. Yeah, personally feeling, I don't see him coming out and making these accusations if he doesn't have the proof.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's going to be interesting to see, man, what proof comes forward. I mean, I agree with you that Flores comes across as somebody who's too smart to only file this lawsuit with something so circumstantial as that text message. Because, like I said, it would be very easy to dismiss that text message alone if that's the only evidence that you have. And that's why I wanted to point out how easy that would actually be to dismiss. So I agree that I think he probably does have something else that he hasn't yet brought out. Now, again, kind of going back to, what are we really looking at here? Well, I'm sure a lot of Miami fans would not be terribly upset if he actually had some proof of the allegations of that he's making against Ross, because I know quite a few Miami fans aren't too happy with him as an owner. So
As do I.
I don't think they'd be too upset about that if he's able to prove some of that stuff. But in all honesty, I don't know what proof he would have of that, unless you were like illegally taping this dude or something, because you know he's probably
Got
out
something
there
for
right.
you, sir. He actually has. They did state that there's multiple people who are willing to sign documents saying that they heard him say that he'd give them $100,000 for every loss. So they have people that are willing to say that was done. Witnesses that are
Yeah.
willing to, say that
And,
that was done.
and if it comes out that that's the case, he should absolutely lose his team.
I agree. Now, for me, I'm gonna just run through these comments real quick and respond because we're interactors, so we got to interact with our peoples.
Oh yeah,
Deshaun Watson was set up. I completely 100% agree with that, because if he wasn't set up, there wouldn't be half of the people saying he did do it and half of the people saying he's never done me that way. If you were that type of person, you don't pick and choose. You're a predator. You're going after everybody.
Right.
That's my final take on that, but I do agree. Critical Broncos fan, like my co-host said, they're ready to run that dude out of town anyway. Big E, timing. To me, the fact that it was 2 interviews done with Dabo, whether we have that text message or not, why are you interviewing this guy after you've already done 2 interviews with other people? Because at the end of the day, you should be doing, and this is how it's always been, your first round of interviews. You remove the people you don't want. Then you come back, if you want to do second interviews, with everybody that you want. So if you're doing 2 interviews with someone, then doing your first interview with someone, I don't care who it is, that looks suspect. So that's my take on that. Critical Broncos fan, amen, brother. That's all I can say to your comment. Amen, brother.
So one thing I will point out in regards to Eric's comment about the timing is this. Yes, the timing is going to ultimately dictate whether the Giants get in trouble for this. I don't agree that it's going to necessarily prove if it was a sham interview or not. Take note of what I said earlier. I do believe that the Giants had some initial interest. My question is, why did it take you so long to schedule your first interview with him? If you were interested in him as soon as he got fired in Miami, he was a guy that you didn't have to wait for. There was no playoff games to work around. There was no nothing. You could literally interview him at any time. Why did it take you so long to interview him? To me, that's the interesting question.
Because he wasn't really a candidate.
So let's actually kind of dive into the other side of this for a second, though. Let's talk about, the problem here is the Rooney Rule is something that we've all known really hasn't worked, right? I mean, it's been talked about for a couple of years now that it's not really working. It's not getting more black head coaches in. As a matter of fact, right now, this year, at this moment, there are less black head coaches in the NFL than there were when the Rooney Rule was actually made. Let that sink in for a second. The year that the Rooney Rule was made, there were 3 NFL head coaches who were African American at the time, and now there's 1.
It was 2.
Yeah, so we actually have gone backwards in terms of the number of African Americans who are head coaches in the NFL. Even if you extend it out and say minorities as a whole, that doesn't really up the number that much. That only gives you another 2 or 3.
I think. Who's the 2 or 3? I think it only gives you.
Well, I know Robert Saleh, and I know what's his name in Washington, Rivera.
Oh yeah, around Rivera. Yeah, so it does give you 3.
I'm trying to think if there's another one that I might be not thinking of right now.
It does give you 3. Yeah, forgot about Riverboat Ron.
Yeah. So, to me, what we have to start talking about is how do we fix this, right? Because it's not just a matter of getting more owners who, are not white, because all you really could do is like do ownership shares. Like you can't just take a team away from somebody and say, "Hey, we're gonna just take the team away from all the white guys and give it to people who are black." Like you can't do that, right? You can't necessarily try to just force people to make certain hires, because even if you like went right now and said, "Look, we have to have 50% of all the general managers in the league be non-white." Even if you went and did that, how long do you think any of those people are going to keep their jobs? You're trying to force them into positions that people don't want them in. They're not going to keep them around. They'll keep them around. If you say they got to keep them for at least 2 years, then guess what? Every last one of them will get fired at 2 years and 1 day. So we can't force people into these positions. What we have to do is we have to find a way to make it to where these candidates are actually getting a fair chance. Look, I've never met one single person of color who's actually said that they like the Rooney Rule. I've never met anyone who said that they ever expected anything to be handed to them. What I have heard over and over again is that people want to feel like they have, when they walk into these interviews, that they have a fair chance to get the job. How do we create that?
So I want to introduce Justin. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but the coach that was with I believe he was with the Lions at the time, and he went on some interviews that he felt were farces just to satisfy the Rooney Rule.
Mm-hmm.
Also, want to introduce Hugh Jackson's comments into this.
Yes.
So think about it like this: you have a couple of obviously black coaches that were let go. Want to focus on David Culley, and of course,
Which we both talked about at the time was a
yep,
terrible decision.
and of course, our man of the hour, Brian Flores. So Hugh Jackson basically corroborated that also in some way, shape, or form. He's kind of mixed things up a little bit since his initial comments, but in some way, shape, or form, basically what he's been saying is that when he was in Cleveland, there was also encouragement to tank games to get high draft picks as well.
Yeah.
You know, and then what happened? Had the bad years, got a little extra money, get out of here. So what I'm seeing, and obviously Tomlin is the exception here,
Yeah.
but what I'm seeing from most of these other black coaches, you get a couple of years at most, and you're out of there.
Yeah.
Your teams are normally bad. You don't get a chance to get the guys in, turn it around, and build a team up.
Mm-hmm.
So even the coaches of color that are getting hired, they're not given the same leash that a non-person of color are being given so far. For the most part, obviously, again, Mike Tomlin is a complete anomaly in the fact that he's been there as long as he has, and also no losing seasons, so no excuse.
Yep.
So when I look at this, there's a lot to say, but it's very simple on what really needs to be said. If these allegations are true,
Mm-hmm.
for each organization, there's need to be consequences. If Denver interviewed this man in a disheveled state, either with not enough, without enough sleep, or hungover, there needs to be consequences. That's unacceptable. You expect the person that you're interviewing to show up at any interview for any job. You expect him to show up with a certain decorum and acting a certain way, dressed a certain way, with a certain level of professionalism, and so should you. If you go to an interview and you don't share that level of professionalism, then there should be punishment for you. The Giants, if you brought this man in, told him whatever back in the day, brought him in, and then decided, oh, we're not going to hire you, so we're going to interview other people, dabble at least one person twice, make a hire, already had a decision, but then we're going to reach out to you, have you come in for an interview later. That's trash. That needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Miami, if what's said is true, there's an opportunity for diversity because that team needs to be sold. There are lots of minor stakeholders.
Yeah.
One of those could step up, maybe a group, and buy that team. That's a chance to get a minority owner.
Yep.
Here's what I'm going to say. Obviously, I agree completely with you, but let's be real. The only way to change this is very simple. The people who are in charge or the people that are taking over have to be willing to say, I'm going to give this person of color that I'm interviewing the same thought, the same opportunity as I would a person that looks like me,
Yeah.
right? Ownership, they have to do that for the general managers that they're going to bring in. General managers, they have to do that for the coaches that they're going to bring in. A guy like Eric Bieniemy, there's all this talk about, oh, he interviews poorly. I don't understand a guy who sits at the side of Andy Reid, right, is going to be that bad at interviewing.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry, it may be true, but I don't believe that. There's other guys that are going through multiple cycles. A guy like Byron Leftwich, he didn't want to go to Jacksonville because he didn't want to coach with a general manager. Why? Because it probably would have been the same thing.
Yeah.
Who you hire is who you hire. But if I walk into an interview and no matter how well I do, you've already decided I'm not a candidate, then what's the point of me being there? I'm only there because you have this rule to satisfy, not because you really want to consider me for a candidate. That's the tragic part of all this. There has to be more people of color, not just blacks, but people of color, period. It's general managers, front office people, VPs, those type of positions in these NFL organizations. The owners are the owners,
Yeah.
you know, but the people that come under them, the people that they hire, there should be more diversity. There should be women included as well. These are
Yeah.
things that need to be fixed, but the people that can fix them is either the league
Mm-hmm.
and or the teams. You can't make someone hire, like you said,
Right.
but you can say, look, man, we've been through 7 coaching cycles for you, and you keep hiring the same type of people. What's going on?
Yeah.
Make them
Yeah.
take some accountability when these things are consistent. You can't make them say this or that, but that's what you need to do. That's
Yeah.
all you really can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if any of us really know what the actual answer is right now. Yeah, I had just put that up there. I don't
Yeah, I
know
hit the button
how.
by accident.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if any of us really and truly have the ultimate answer for this, right? Because at the core, it is a very simple idea. And this is something that we talked about the other night that I explained to a friend of ours. There is racism, and then there's being racist. Being a racist means like, hey, I dislike you because of the color of your skin or whatever, right? Like that's you are actually discriminating against someone based on something like the way they look. But racism is more of a systematic thing. It's when you hold beliefs about people, but you don't recognize the fact that your beliefs are not accurate. And I think you got people who are in some of these positions that they might not be a racist person. They might not like literally go out and say, like, oh, I hate black people, right? Like they're not that kind of racist, but they have certain beliefs. There's certain stereotypes they've bought into. There's certain things that they've allowed on a, even if it's a subconscious level, that impact their decisions. And that's why we talk about a lot of these things over time. Because sometimes it's not even the conscious decision of, oh, I'm going to hire this white person instead of this black person. A lot of times is those little subtle things that you might believe about black people that's preventing you from hiring a qualified candidate for a position, or why you might prefer a white candidate for a position. That's the problem that I see with a lot of these teams, is that we have a lot of systematic racism that exists in this country, and it has led to certain groups of people being marginalized. And that's the real underlying problem here. And I don't know how we're going to get more opportunities for people of color or for women or for any other marginalized group in these type of positions until we can get people to overcome these beliefs.
I agree with the critical Broncos fans' last statement. I'm gonna go ahead and put this up here. Um, I think this is a very good point. For me, I don't as much think it's. I don't feel like it's racism. I feel like it's more of a systematic oppressive behavior,
Yeah.
meaning that you just don't believe that you should be hiring people that don't look like you and don't think like you. And I think that's more of the situation. Are there racist people in some of these positions? I mean, if we're looking at just numbers, of course, some of them are.
Of
But I think
course.
the main problem is that oppressive nature. I'm going to either pick this guy who looks like me, or this guy who doesn't look like me, this guy who at least understands my culture more, or this guy that doesn't. And I think we're seeing things slide to that direction. That is what it is. There's nothing we can say on here, or there's nothing anyone else can say that's going to stop that unless it's people who have something to do with those things. So it's not really too much more that we can say about that. You
I,
know,
I I did just want to respond real quick to critical Broncos fans comment about black coaches getting hired on bad teams. The reality is, it's not very often that good teams have a head coaching opening. Most of the time, when you have a head coaching opening, it is for a bad team. It's like saying that top tier quarterbacks go to bad teams. Well, bad teams get the first pick in the draft. So yeah, generally, really good quarterbacks out of college do go to bad teams. And I can point out quite a few examples of white coaches who have also been fired after 1 year or 2 years. So it does happen. I think part of the issue here is it's not so much that these things happen; it's about the numbers, right? If I have 32 NFL teams, and let's say in an average season we have about 7 to 9 openings that come up. If only one of those positions, say, is filled by a non-white candidate, if that person gets fired after 2 years, they were literally the only person that got a chance, and they only got 2 years. The other, say, 6 to 8 people who got hired are white. Even if 2 or 3 of them also get fired after 2 years, you still have a higher rate of white coaches that stuck, whether that was 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. They so it's a more of a chance of them sticking. If you actually had more minority coaches get hired in a cycle, even if 1 or 2 of them got fired after a year or two, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. The problem is that the sheer volume that we're talking about is so low that those people not getting longer opportunities is what's so hurtful.
there's a change that needs to happen. It is what it is. But obviously something we could continue to talk about. We're gonna go ahead and switch
Yep.
gears here.
Yep. Because
Um,
we're almost out of time. So
a couple of coaching hires. Wanted to just quickly touch on. We don't have to spend a lot of time on these, but just a couple of hires I wanted to just kind of touch on. So
yep.
Jacksonville Jaguars um, ended up hiring Doug Peterson. I feel like that was the right hire. I feel like Leftwich could have been a good hire there as well, but understandably, he elected not to take that job because he didn't feel comfortable with the general manager. It's a wise decision. If you don't like the person you're reporting to, don't take the job.
Yeah.
Um,
The
you have a
QC ain't
franchise
had no
quarterback.
problem.
Yeah. You have a franchise quarterback in Jacksonville. You need somebody to develop him.
Yep.
That's something that I believe Doug Peterson is going to be able to do. So, yes, Mr. McCain's my allowed Dougie P. So glad that he's getting another opportunity. He brings a championship pedigree because he did win a championship in the 2017 season uh, for the Philadelphia Eagles. Flag was fly. Um, so that's that. Did you have any comments on Doug Peterson, man?
No, I mean, I just think that Peterson maybe kind of being a bit of a yes man in Philadelphia. Maybe he was a little bit more willing to put himself in that situation because we know that multiple candidates, not just Brian Leftwich, did not want to work under Trent Baalke. And as a 49ers fan who had Trent Baalke as their general manager for a few years, great decision, guys. Great decision. You do not want to work under Trent Baalke.
Now the next one is perplexing and puzzling to me. which is Josh McDaniel to the Raiders. And the reason I think it's crazy Josh McDaniels to the Raiders is because this guy went out to Indianapolis, took the job, and he backed out.
Yeah.
Right. So he's basically the runaway bride of NFL head coach hires, right? New hires. So why do you want to bring this guy in when you had a guy there that the team loved?
Yeah.
Why not allow him to keep the job and continue with the momentum, the buy-in that he had from the players, got him to the playoffs. He did everything he was supposed to do, and you still went out and buy a guy, went and got a guy who may be good for you in the long run, because normally guys who, when they have their second opportunity, they handle things a lot better, but he may not even come. And it puts you in a worse situation, scrambling, attempting to hire somebody at the last minute. Why, Raiders? Why?
Yeah, the Josh McDaniels one is tough for me. He's obviously talented as an offensive play caller, right? I mean, I don't think any of us would question that. But, kind of going back to Airbnb, okay, so he doesn't interview well. This dude literally took a job, allowed the team to hire assistant coaches, and then backed out of the job. I mean, I can't think of a example of does he interview well worse than that. But hey, man, it's the Raiders. What do you expect?
Yep. A critical Broncos fan brings up the Jaguars and their 42 and 119 since 2022. A lot of MLB teams have more wins than that in a season outside of 2020, of course, the shortened season. I mean, it's a valid statistical point, but there's quite a few teams, if you really look, that don't have a lot of wins in the NFL that suck, because that's why the other teams are good. Somebody's got to be bad.
Yeah.
We also have one other quick hire here to talk about, and that one hasn't been completely done, but that's because he's about to be the OC in the Super Bowl, and the season has to be over for him before you can hire him, and that's Kevin O'Connell, who is being rumored to be the guy in Minnesota from multiple sources. I want to say, have to give my co-host over here a little bit of props, because he did say, and you can check these receipts last week as well, that Jim Harbaugh was going to interview and try to get back in the NFL. And what did Jim Harbaugh do? He went to Minnesota and interviewed. And after he interviewed, they hired O'Connell. Best part about this is he didn't have to go back to Michigan, just tail between his legs, and say, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Hey, when you are the man at Michigan, they kept you through some seasons where you could have been fired, and you're still there. You probably shouldn't have interviewed unless if you went to them beforehand and said, okay, I'm going to go do this interview. If it works, obviously I'm going to leave. If not, we good. I can respect it. I don't know if you took that route or not. I'm not Jim Harbaugh. I'm not Michigan. I completely disagree with you on this one, critical Broncos fan. I know my co-host will as well. But Harbaugh doesn't strike me as a guy that really needs to be out of the college ranks right now.
Now, I'm going to add this comment real quick. So I did say last week that Harbaugh would interview, and I did say that for the right opportunity, he would, in fact, consider coming back to the NFL. I did not believe that the Vikings were that opportunity. I do think that the job that Harbaugh was genuinely interested in was the Raiders. The Vikings, to me, was Jim Harbaugh saying, hey, it's already been kind of put out there that I'm interested in going back to the NFL. I can go do this and maybe talk Michigan into giving me some more money. That's what I think he actually used the Vikings for. I don't think he was actually interested in the Vikings job. I do think he was interested in coming back to the NFL for the right job, but I don't believe the Vikings job was it. I don't think they ever had a chance of hiring him at all.
It may have been an opportunity that they really didn't want him either. They just wanted the publicity of bringing him in.
Maybe.
Yeah. Could have been possible that it went both ways.
Yeah. So It is what it is. He's
I
back at
wouldn't want
Michigan. Yeah, he's back at Michigan. It is what it is. So we should also probably by next week have an answer, I would imagine, on the Dolphins job. Although with the rumors circulating around there, that's going to be interesting to see how that impacts, because they are interviewing the run game coordinator / offensive coordinator from San Francisco, Mike McDaniels, and they're also interviewing Kellen Moore, who's the offensive coordinator for the Arlington football team. So we will see if either one of those guys is willing to walk into that hornet's nest for their first job, or if both of them decide to steer clear. So interesting one to watch. We
Yep, there's another
also
season. Yep.
There's also rumors that Brian Flores is still considered one of the top candidates for Houston,
As well as
which
Jonathan Gannon.
yeah, which by the way, if Flores does go there, it'll be very interesting to see if Deshaun Watson backs off his desire for a trade.
That's a good point. Because the young boy they had playing last year, man, actually played pretty well. So they might be, moving on. But the thing is, you're not going to get what you want for Deshaun Watson. If you really want to trade him, even if he comes, you got to go down on that price point. It's not going to work.
Critical Broncos fan, I have to assume that Kirk Cousins' contract must be over that year, and they're going to be getting somebody else.
They could be in that this year, Critical Broncos fan. Because they do still have Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, because as long as Kirk Cousins is there, they're not going to do anything. As long as Counselor Kirk's there, they're not going to do anything.
Shout out to you, Witty. We used it.
So real quick, man, we are already over our time, but we got a little extra time we can use right now. Let's go ahead and just do like a really quick run through of these championship games from last weekend, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So first of all, congratulations to the Cincinnati Bengals and the LA Rams. I feel dirty saying that, but I'll get to a little bit more on that in a second. Let's start with this Bengals and Chiefs. So obviously not taking anything away from the Bengals. They handled their business. They did what they need to do. They did what we both predicted they would do, which was win. But let's also not pretend that Patrick Mahomes was absolute trash juice in the second half of that game.
I'm going to simply say this. Whenever you lose a game, it's not all the quarterback, right? The play calling was atrocious in the second half.
It was.
This is vintage Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lead, you stop doing everything that works, and you do all this different stuff. And when you see it doesn't work, you say, oh, we're up enough where we'll still win. This is vintage Andy Reid. When you give away the momentum in an NFL game, you normally don't get it back unless the other team is bad enough to give it back to you. We saw last week against the Chiefs. Before this, the Chiefs, when they played the Bills, they pretty much did the same thing. The only difference was they were able to pull it out in OT. This time, they got stopped in OT and then lost. Mm-hmm. So what I want people to realize, I'm not hating on Andy Reid, but I want you to understand he's the main factor. This is what he's done almost every year. The one year he didn't do it, they won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Every other year, he hasn't been to the Super Bowl but twice. In all the years he's coached, he's been 3 times in total. 1 with the Eagles, 2 here, 1 loss, 1 win, lost with the Eagles. So ask yourself, yeah, Patrick Mahomes' play in the second half was bad. But had the team called the game the way they did in the first half, would it have been the same? And I, for one, will say, I think they would have put some points on the board. I don't know if it would have been a field goal. I don't know if it would have been a touchdown. I don't know if it would have been multiple. But I think points would have been on the board if they played the game the same way. There's a saying always in sports, don't take your foot off your opponent's throat. Andy Reid's never heard that. And it continues to show with him.
Yeah. So Mr. McCain's monologue also made some good points here that Patrick Mahomes started believing his own hype and they try to be too cute with the clock. I will say this. That throw in overtime that got picked off. Patrick Mahomes developed Superman complex. You had no business throwing that pass. None. That dude was clearly covered. He was double covered. He had no chance of catching that football. And yet still, you made that throw. You had Travis Kelce running wide open underneath. And you just overlooked him and you threw into double coverage. Why? Because you actually have started to believe that you really can make these miraculous plays at any given time.
Oh, and by the way, the 2 throws before that should have been picked as well.
Yeah, they should have.
So you made 3 bad throws.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Nobody wins all the time unless you're Joe Montana in the Super Bowl.
Right.
But, or Michael Jordan in the NBA playoffs, in the NBA finals. Just throw it out there. But you got to be better than that.
Now, I'm just going to throw this out there and then we'll flip gears. Some people might say, oh, you're being too hard on Patrick Mahomes. Hey, Patrick Mahomes went out there and did the exact same thing that Jimmy Garoppolo has been criticized for all year. Went out there and made dumb throws that he had no business making because he believed too much in his own arm. He deserves to be criticized for it, just like Jimmy did.
And the 49ers fans not going to let him get away with that.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the 49ers for a second. Let's talk about this 49ers and Rams game. Now, if you're a 49ers fan, I just want to give you a parental advisory. You about to be mad at me. We didn't deserve to win. We got beat. Were there missed calls? Yeah, there was. There were missed calls on both sides. Should there have been probably about 5 or 6 times that the Rams should have been called for delay of game penalties? Yeah, there was. But you know something? At the end of the game, we had an opportunity with 1:47 on the clock to go down the field. And our offensive line absolutely fell apart. Okay? Y'all talk about the dropped interception. Matthew Stafford tried to give the game away, which is very Matthew Stafford-like. We're not shocked.
True Matthew Stafford fashion.
Yeah. He tried to get a game away. And yes, you know what? That dropped interception definitely hurt. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it didn't hurt. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to put the game away. And I'm going to tell you why. We could not run the ball. Give credit to the Rams. They came in and said, we're going to sell out to stop your running game. And they did it. Deebo Samuel only averaged 3.7 yards a carry. That's not even good. Anything under 4 is not even good in the NFL anymore. Elijah Mitchell was like 2.4 yards per carry. Some ridiculousness. I mean, it was bad. So we could not run the ball. That's why we lost this game. The defense actually didn't play horrible. I think D'Amico Ryan's inexperience got caught up a little bit. I'm glad he's coming back next year. I think with the whole offseason and another year to grow, he's going to have this defense absolutely playing phenomenal by this time next year. But his inexperience got showed a little bit. They went to a quick passing game. They hid Cooper Kupp. He could not figure out how to stop that. He could not stop that quick passing game. Cooper Kupp was absolutely destroying us the entire game. Okay? Then you look at the fact that once they stopped our running game, we couldn't do anything. By the time those last 2 series came up, Jimmy Garoppolo was running for his life. He had no chance. The right side of my offensive line, which if you go back a few weeks to right before we played Dallas, my coach asked me, what do you think? What is your biggest worry against Dallas? And I said, the right side of my offensive line. And that's exactly what cost us. So you know what? Are we better than the Rams? I'd say we beat them, 6 out of 7 times. But you know what? They had the better game plan on Sunday. They executed it better, and they beat us in a one-on-one matchups. And I give them credit. I'm not going to blame the refs. I'm not going to blame any individual player. As a team, they outplayed us as a team.
I'll say this about the game from my perspective. I think a lot of players, a lot of fans, you know, even impartial people who are just cheering for whoever, kind of like, oh, 49ers beat them 6 times in a row. And we talked about this, and you said to me, I feel we're going to win this game, but we could lose this game, right? And based on the previous games with y'all and the Rams, there was a lot of shock value, I think, well, what they were able to do to stop your run game because they hadn't been able to do that in so long,
Yeah,
right?
that's what surprised me. Yeah.
So I think your coaching staff, came in like they're not going to be able to stop our run game, so we're going to pound it on them, pound it on them, and that's how we're going to win. Then when it didn't work, it's kind of like you just don't know what else to do. Um, Kudos to them for the game plan adjustments. I mean, it just got spanked by you a few weeks ago, jumped out to a big lead and gave it up.
Yeah.
Still not a blowout by any means. My one thought, and I'm keep it brief because we're already over, was this the Rams Super Bowl?
It was.
So if this was the Rams Super Bowl, they still have another game next week against the Bengals, and the Bengals beat the Chiefs. That was not their Super Bowl.
No.
Or
the Bengals had already beat the Chiefs once.
Or maybe it was. What we will find out in not this Sunday, but the next Sunday, is if either one of those teams really come to play, or we're going to have another one of those Super Bowls where by halftime you're playing on your phone, looking to see what else is on TV, going back to get some more food wherever you're watching the Super Bowl or whatever, because the game's not that good. Hoping for a good game, but there's a little part of me that's like, did these two teams already play their Super Bowl?
Yeah. I will tell you one thing, man. The Rams pass rush should definitely be able to put a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow. But even if they get up, boy, don't count the Bengals out, man. There's something about them cats, man.
Joe Burrow been taking a beating all year.
Yeah. I will say this though, and I do not say this in a disrespectful way towards Jimmy Garoppolo. Next year, if we find ourselves in the same position and somebody wants to shut down our running game, we're going to have a quarterback who's going to be able to hit you on deep passes. And he's going to make you pay for stacking against our run. Jimmy Garoppolo did not have the ability to do that. Okay, that was not Jimmy's game. And that's not a knock on Jimmy. That's just an honest assessment of his game. But I do want to close out with this because Jimmy Garoppolo probably has played his last game as a 49er. He acknowledged as much in his last press conference. But I appreciate the fact that when he came to this team, we were absolute hot garbage. And that he has helped transform this team and actually make them competitive, took them to 2 NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl. I appreciate the fact that this year he handled everything as a professional. Trey Lance has said that Jimmy Garoppolo will be a friend of his for life because Jimmy has been a great teammate. He's been very supportive of him. He's actually helped him develop and learn. So I, as a 49ers fan, just want to say I appreciate everything Jimmy Garoppolo has done during his 5 years in San Francisco. And I really appreciate the fact that you are going to be worth a first or second round draft pick for us. So thank you.
I just want to say, man, I appreciate, everybody that's subscribed to the show, everybody that's still watching the show.
Me too, absolutely.
Everybody that watched the portion of the show, maybe some happy didn't get to watch the whole thing, and everybody who watches the replay. I have one ask from everybody that sees the video, that's watching it live. Share it, please. Let some of your other people that watch sports know about these two guys that talk a little nonsense with you about an hour or so every Friday night.
Yep.
And hopefully, man, the one thing we set out to do from the beginning, hopefully we're still doing that, is providing people with a little bit of escape for, the time that we're on here, because time's still rough.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is a little escape for y'all, man.
Absolutely, man. And real quick shout out, make sure you come next Friday night for sure. We're going to be doing a Super Bowl preview, and play callers right here. We do have access to the Super Bowl virtual platform, so we will be participating in all the media interview sessions. Hopefully we'll get a chance to ask some questions and talk to some of the athletes and the coaches. And we'll be able to come back and give y'all some nice insights next Friday night for all the things we get to learn during media week. So looking forward to it.
Plan for maybe a little bit longer next week too, because it's a lot of juicy information.
Oh yeah. The juice is loose.
The juice is loose.
So y'all know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, bottom right-hand corner if you haven't. If you have, please share with a friend. And we will see you next Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And don't forget that like button.
Unbox. He's cool. And we are
the Play Callers.